So first and foremost, what do you want for your child? I think a couple things come to our mind. It's a broad question, but we want our child to be, we want them to be well educated. We want our child to be, sorry, this clicker is not, okay, there we go. We want our child to be successful. We want them to do something great.
You can just click, you don't have to look.
Okay. And we want our child to be hopefully financially stable. But I think the most important thing that we really want for our child is to be overall just happy. We want them to have a general sense of well-being. But I think that the pursuit of happiness proves to be a lot more difficult than we're kind of making it out to be. In fact, the pursuit of happiness can be so challenging that 48.4% of Americans 18 to 29 reported symptoms of anxiety and depression. Overall, 36.4% of women and 30.5% of men reported symptoms also of anxiety and depression. There we go. Alrighty, and unfortunately, suicide is still the second leading cause of death in 10 to 24-year-olds and has increased by over 50% between the years 2000 and 2021. And lastly, more than 50,000 Americans died by suicide in 2023. That is more than any year on record. So we clearly have a significant problem with achieving happiness. And I think that a big part of why we're having such a big problem is because happiness is closely associated with emotional intelligence. And we're not naturally that good at emotional intelligence, clearly. It's because we need to be taught emotional intelligence, just like any other form of intelligence. We're taught it, and through consistent application, we get better at it. But what are those skills? How do we go about teaching those skills? Well, me and Dr. Sarah Levins, underneath Department of Psychological Science, have been working on developing an evidence-based children's book based on emotional clarity as a pathway to public dissemination. I know that sounds like a lot of psychological jargon, and it is, but we're going to get right into it. So first and foremost, what is emotional clarity? Emotional clarity is the ability to identify and label one's emotions. Its importance comes from its foundational nature. It's foundational in the development of more advanced emotional skills, particularly emotional regulation. Throughout my literary review, what we found was that there was a close association between low levels of emotional clarity in adolescence and low levels of socio-emotional health and development. That particularly looked like social avoidance, but even in female adolescents, that looked like aggression towards peers. And overall, this is assessed through self-reports. We plan to administer the trait meta mood scale throughout my study. So you might be thinking this sounds kind of important. Have we done anything in the past? We have. There are previous intervention programs that have been developed, implemented, and studied for effectiveness. The one that I particularly looked at was called the Emotional Self-Management course. And despite being actually linked to enhancing psychosocial functioning and psychological adjustment, these programs are heavily underutilized due to financial inaccessibility. So what we hope to do is to create a form of intervention that is accessible. So that's our product. It's the development of a children's storybook that incorporates evidence-based research on emotional attention and emotional clarity into the storyline to help both parents and young children identify and label their emotions. We've broken this down into two major phases. Phase one being my in-depth literary review that went over defining what emotional clarity is and how it's measured. And I also went into establishing what are some best practices in children's narrative and character development. Our phase two is the utilization of focus groups that consist of our target audience to identify relatable scenarios and social dynamics. That is going to be the foundation of our book's narrative, plot, and conflict. All right, so what does this mean? So the implications of a product like this is making an effective means of intervention for young children and their parents. It's also going to be economically feasible, accessible, and enjoyable. And overall, we can also use character relatability to supply children with role models that encourage altruism, tolerance, and hopefully empathy. So our target audience is going to be parents with children over the age of 2 and 10. That's also going to be what our focus group is going to consist of. We allow for all genders, ethnicities, and races to be able to attend, and we want all genders and ethnicities to be able to attend. All right, so here's some of our questions, and this is going to make up the primarily what our book is going to be about. So we have our demographic questions, but we also have our questions like describe a situation in which your child struggled to understand and regulate their emotions. That's going to make up our story. So this is how it's going to be analyzed through a thematic analysis, kind of boring stuff, but but we're going to use a thematic analysis to analyze all this data. Alrighty, so what I really want you guys to take away from this is that this is not just the development of a very important and imperative product, but this is also during a time in which we are in the middle of a mental health crisis with a lack of mental health providers. So we need to start mending this huge gap between research findings and how the general public interprets and utilizes those findings. This is a step in that direction and mending that gap, and hopefully towards making the pursuit of happiness just a little bit less challenging. So with that, I open it up to questions.
Thank you. Good job.
Anytime.
Okay, perfect. Tori, we should chat. This is like right up my alley.
Okay, awesome. I'm so excited. Okay.
My first company worked on measuring student social emotional skills, so this is great.
Yes, we should definitely
So
chat.
tell me more, can you just paint me a picture of a student reading one of your books versus a traditional novel, and kind of what the experience would be different for them that they're able to pick up on and learn more about the emotions they're feeling?
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, we haven't done any of the focus groups yet, so it's going to take a little bit of time of doing that and seeing what we really, seeing what results we get from that. But hopefully what we plan to experience is that we're going to measure using the trait meta mood scale the effectiveness of this. So we hope that from the start of the book to the end of the book that there's actually an increase in emotional clarity and being able to identify your emotions. So that's what we hope to find in our studies, and that's what we hope to find in our target audience.
Maybe just quick follow-up, but what do you picture being different about the book that they're going to make that change in growth?
Yeah. So there are psychological books that are out there right now, as a lot of people know. We hoped that through consistent focus groups to create something that's a little bit more successful and more evidence-based in proving some of those psychological concepts. And so the ultimate goal of the book is just to help children identify and label their emotions, but I'm not entirely sure what that book's going to look like yet because the focus groups haven't been done yet.
About 45 seconds.
What's the timeline from the idea to you standing out now? Like, how much time did you take? Is it months, weeks? Just give a little
No, I'm so
background.
glad you asked. Yeah, so first and foremost, my literary review is already done, which was a huge part of it. The focus groups are going to be done by the end of this semester, so then I'll have a lot more information to give you guys about how this is going to look. And then next fall, we're going to do an additional focus group on the rough draft to see how effective it is. And then by next summer, we hope to have it published.
I think I heard you say that the interventions that exist already don't have great take-up to them, and so
Yeah.
you're doing the. So what will you do? Have you thought yet on getting this book out there and making sure that this intervention, in a sense, works?
Yeah, absolutely. So the previous intervention programs were primarily like school courses, which unfortunately a lot of school systems just didn't implement. This is going to be a book that we hope to just be in school libraries that can be just picked up, so it's significantly more accessible. And yeah, that's pretty much the ultimate goal in accessibility, is just for it to be in school libraries, and it's going to be assessed for, is this reading material that people even want to be picking up? So we hope to make something that people actually want to read. But yeah, so it's going to be in school libraries, so it's very accessible to basically any student who goes to public school systems.
Thank you so much. Great job.
Thank you.